Hello, I'm John Rossi, a touring drummer with the love of all things animal. When I'm on the road, I visit as many zoos, aquariums... Hey, wait a minute. What's going on? Hey, what's going on there? Hello? 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 We interrupt your regularly scheduled program to bring you Rossifari Zoo news. News you can use from the world of zoos and conservation. Every week, we bring you breaking news and analysis from around the globe, featuring the animals you love and the people who care for them. And here's your anchorman, John Rossi.
Hi, hello, how are you? Welcome back to Rossifari Zoo News, your look at everything going on in the world of zoos, aquariums, conservation, and general animal weirdness. Zoo News is, of course, a crowd sourced zoo news program. So if you want to send me anything that you think is zoo newsworthy, you can follow me on the socials at Rossifari or at Rossifari Pod on the TikTok machine and tag me in stories there or email them to me, rossifaripod@gmail.com, and I'll say your name at the end of the episode. So we always start off by me talking a little bit about what's going on in my life. And y'all, if you can't hear it, I am sick right now. Nothing crazy. It's just, I can't even tell if it's allergies or a cold, but it might be because I've run myself completely ragged. This entire $1 Million Quartet contract has just been nonstop, wall to wall, every day, filled with really good stuff, including zoo visits and shows and time with friends and a lot of time with Miles, which I am loving. But I forgot to include downtime in any of it. As a matter of fact, the zoo visits that I did, I'll talk about more in a minute, but they were near my parents. So I spent a couple days with my parents as well. And it's all been great. Like, there is nothing to complain about. Love all of it. But yeah, I haven't really built in much downtime. I think I was averaging like 5 hours of sleep a night for some of these nights. So it has caught up with me. And turns out that I am not invincible, which is a bummer, but that's okay. But at least I'm not talking like this. I'm not that sick. So that's good. Now, as far as zoo visits, the last couple days I had off. And so I got to spend some time in Virginia and D.C., specifically at Smithsonian's National Zoo and the Smithsonian's Conservation Biology Institute, which is their private campus in Front Royal, Virginia. They do some really cool stuff there, and I'm really excited to bring those stories to y'all. As a matter of fact, over the 2 days that I spent at the two facilities, we recorded 5 episodes. So season 6 is going to have a whole lot of cool stuff from the Smithsonian. And in particular, I have to give a shout out to Ellie, who is a person on the PR team there. I don't actually have her title in front of me, and I feel terrible that I don't remember it, but probably something cool like nifty person that does PR at the Smithsonian, or something like that. That's probably her title. But this is the person who I worked with to set up all these interviews and everything. And beyond that, Ellie and I hung out a lot. Like, we had downtime between interviews, and she just hung out with me, and we became friends, and we talked about a lot of things, and honestly had some like personal deep discussions. Nothing crazy, but like, yeah, it was really cool. And, for all the cool animal stuff and all of the cool on mic stuff that you guys get to hear, honestly, one of the most amazing things about doing this podcast is just making personal connections and making new friends and, finding these amazing people and getting to spend time with them. And I got a whole lot of time with Ellie over this trip, and it was amazing. So I am incredibly thankful to her. And last thing I need to tell you before we move on is that I got to see Superman this week. The movie is incredible. And if you have seen the previews, then you know that Crypto, the super dog, is in the movie. And I fully expected Crypto to be a bit part, maybe show up once or twice and not really have much to do with the overall movie. After all, it is called Superman, not Super Dog. Well, it turns out the movie could be called Super Dog. Crypto is all throughout the movie, and it is fan-freaking-tastic. If you are not a big comic book person, but you like dogs, I still recommend checking out Superman. It's also the launch of a new universe, so like it's not like if you go see a Marvel movie right now and if you haven't seen the last 276 of them, you're missing something. So go check out Superman and go enjoy crypto. And actually, crypto has proven to be so popular that there has been a 513% increase in interest in adopting dogs since the opening of Superman. That is amazing. So crypto is the hero who's actually doing amazing work in the real world. And I love that so much. So, okay, with all of that said, I think it is time to get to it. All right, y'all. So this week I'm starting off with a pseudo headline story. It's more of a rant that starts with a news story. So, okay, back in April, a lioness was euthanized at the Columbus Zoo. Asali, the lioness, was in holding with her group of lionesses when a door separating them from another group of lions, including an adult male named Rory, broke. And this was problematic, as it was known that Asali and Rory did not get along, and there had been some aggression between the two in the past. The zoo believes that the door was damaged by one of the lions, which led to the failure, which led to conflict between Asali and Rory, and the injuries Asali sustained were bad enough that she had to be euthanized. Now, the zoo self-reported the issue to the U.S. Department of Agriculture as well as to the AZA. They were cited by the USDA and given a timeline in which to make sure everything was fixed and this couldn't happen again. The zoo did that, reinforcing the door and also examining other similar doors at the facility where no vulnerabilities were found. The details of the incident were shared with other AZA zoos so that they could learn from what happened at Columbus and hopefully prevent, future issues. And okay, so I'm going to pause for a second. And yes, that sucks. And I'm not here to downplay how much that sucks, right? When there is an error, when there is an animal that loses its life because it was in human care, that's really unfortunate, but it does happen. And I feel for the keepers and for the zoo. It's a horrible thing that happened and that shouldn't have. And we all know that. And because we all know that, it's not worthy of being a headline story, right? I would never lead Zoo News proper with a story about a great zoo that lost an animal because of a problem with a door. It happens. But I want to look at why this story from April was suddenly sent to me by multiple people this week. And I'm going to say that what follows here is partially conjecture, but I want to share it because it goes back to a recurring theme on this podcast. So my guess, and it's just a guess, is that the Columbus Zoo didn't necessarily want to put this story out in the world for the general public. Or if they did, they would have put it out in April instead of posting a statement about it in the middle of July. And I think that's fine. If you listened to Tuesday's episode, you'll know that my take on transparency is that it is ridiculous to expect every facility to share every single death or every issue they have. That is a super oversimplification, but if you haven't heard that episode, you really should. And if you have, then you know what I'm talking about. But my point here is that the zoo did everything correctly. They self-reported to the bodies they need to report to. They had internal and external investigations. They shared their findings with other facilities, and they accepted their citation. And like I said, it's my guess that they also decided that this one didn't need to be a public story, so they didn't make it a public story, which is fine. So why did they suddenly put out a social media post explaining what happened now, a couple months later? Well, I happen to be in a bunch of zoo-specific groups for the members of one zoo or even just fans of various zoos. And one of them is a fan group for the Buffalo Zoo, and that is where Rory, the male lion in this story, comes from. And a few of the people in that group are literally obsessed with the lions, both former and current, at the Buffalo Zoo. Like obsessed, as in they regularly call other zoos to try to get status updates on lions that have moved on. I cannot even imagine what it's like to be the person who answers the phone at a zoo, where usually they don't have a whole lot of knowledge of what's going on with the animals and stuff, and to have some person being like, hey, what's going on with this one lion that I knew years ago, many hours away. It's a unique thought. But in this group a few days ago, one of the lion-obsessed people posted the USDA report in that group. And they had this thing on top that was like public information, exclamation points, like already defending themselves for having this information. And this guy said that a friend sent it to him. And it seems like that friend may have, gone fishing to find it. Like, it is a public record, but to find that public record, you have to be looking for that public record. And I tried some Googling just as an experiment, and it's not like it popped up automatically. I didn't go deep because I am way busier than I would need to be to really do a deep dive on that. But it's not like there was a quick and easy way to just pop this report up. So this was added to the group, and then people in the group encouraged other people in the group to reach out to the Columbus Zoo to call and try to get additional information. And then shortly after that happened, the story hit some local press in Columbus, and then the Columbus Zoo released their statement online. So while I can't say with certainty that the small Buffalo Zoo Friends group, which, by the way, I want to be super clear, is not at all like officially sanctioned by the Buffalo Zoo or anything, I cannot say that is what caused all of this to happen. It seems pretty sus, as my son would say. And so I'm going to use this story and say, let this serve as yet another reminder that when documents are made public, people will find them. And if you are a zoo PR person, and I know a lot of you are listening right now, you need to remember that and to plan for that. Again, I can't say with certainty that is why the Columbus Zoo released their statement 2 months after the incident happened. But if not, it's a hell of a coincidence. And again, I want to be super clear. I'm not like trying to, subtly shame the Columbus Zoo here. They didn't owe that information to the public. They get to make those decisions, and, there's a whole lot of thought that goes into them. And I respect that, and I love the Columbus Zoo. I'm actually really glad that when they released their statement, they didn't apologize for not talking about it sooner or anything weird. I've seen zoos do that, and it's not great. But yeah, if you're at a facility where something happens, you need to have a plan in place in case some crazy fan or some heavily motivated anti-zoo person does a search and finds the documentation of an incident and decides to make a big deal about it. And I've talked about this on here before a couple of times, and I've actually had a couple of PR people. I've had a bunch who reached out and said that it was really helpful, but I actually had a few say they thought I was probably a little too concerned about it and that it probably wouldn't happen. But this is like a pretty great example of why I'm concerned about it. And I will say that by handling it in a controlled and measured fashion, the Columbus Zoo has seen the issue rise up a little bit and then quickly fade, which is pretty great for them. So yeah, always remember that government documents are publicly available. Anyone can make FOIA requests, and you never know how obsessive or tenacious someone can be, either with malicious purpose or just the opposite, because they love an animal so much and they're just trying to find information out. So it is always good to have a plan and have a public strategy, even if you don't plan on going public with something. And again, if you are a facility that has been very transparent, then when something like this happens and people start to question your transparency, you will have a record that you can point to that will defend you. So always, always, always be transparent. And that brings us to our births for the week. All right, 'tis the season, y'all, and we have a few red panda cub births to announce. First of all, our friends at the Trevor Lovejoy Zoo have announced the birth of a red panda to Mom Lucy and Dad Zoo. Lucy is being a great mom and is raising the cub unassisted, which is extra special since Lucy is a first-time mom, so that's really exciting. And in the UK, twin red panda cubs have been born at West Midlands Safari. Mom Mei Lin is also doing a great job raising the little ones, allowing the staff to stay hands-off during the process, although they do get to see the cubs as she moves them between nest boxes and such. And in, of all places, Slovakia, 2 panda cubs have been born to Bambu and Mao at ZooMonTana. The translation of the announcement didn't give me a lot to work with here. It was pretty poorly done, but it seems like the cubs are doing well, and I think Mom is raising them. Not 100% sure on any of that because, honestly, that translation did not fly, and I do not speak Slovakian. Is that a thing? Seems like a thing. Anyway, and then back in the States, the Utica Zoo, or Zootica, as I think it should be called, has announced the birth of multiple red panda cubs. I'm assuming it's 2 cubs because that's the norm, but the announcement doesn't actually say how many there are, just that there are cubs, plural. So yeah, at least 7 panda cubs this week alone, and I know that more announcements are coming. Sometimes being an insider is fun, but that is so exciting. New pandas! The Denver Zoo has welcomed an eastern bongo calf. The little one is curious and loves exploring until getting so tired she crashes down for a nap. Parents Howard and Fern are doing a great job taking care of the little one. The Ripley Wildlife Conservancy has welcomed 3 southern screamer chicks to the family. These are the first chicks to the parents and also the first southern screamer chicks to ever hatch at Ripley, so big deal. The Oregon Zoo has hatched 9 California condor chicks at their Wildlife Conservation Center. These 9 are slated to be introduced to the wild to boost the population of the species, which is not only critically endangered, but has also suffered a bunch of recent losses because of the whole avian influenza situation. So these reintroductions are more important than ever. And then last but not least for our births this week, the Detroit Zoo is welcoming a baby chimpanzee to the troupe. Mom Niani and baby are doing well together, bonding behind the scenes as they are gradually introduced to the rest of the troupe in a controlled environment, which so far is going well. And then on the other side of things, we have our deaths for the week. And as excited as I was to have so many red panda births this week, I'm also sad to announce the death of Doodles, also known as Dooley, at ZooMontana. Dooley was a 14-year-old male red panda, which is the average life expectancy for a red panda in human care. Born at the Lincoln Children's Zoo, Dooley left a huge mark on his keepers at both facilities, moving from an eager and playful youth to a relaxed old man who got very excited about his naps. Still, he is greatly, greatly missed. The Santa Fe Teaching Zoo has said goodbye to Rosie, the Chilean rose tarantula. She was recently showing signs of molting, but then she just stopped moving, and it was determined she had passed away. Rosie was an ambassador animal who was known for being calm and gentle, and in her time as an ambassador, she helped hundreds of guests to overcome their fear of spiders. She used to play a game called Ring Around the Rosie, where staff and students would sit in a circle and let her walk hand to hand between them all. Rosie was 22 years old at the time of her passing, outliving the high end of Chilean rose tarantula lifespans by 2 years. And wow, in that life, what an amazing impact she had. Mystic Aquarium has said goodbye to Attic, the northern fur seal. Attic was rescued as a pup in 2016, deemed non-releasable, and took up residence at Mystic. No further details were shared, but Mystic is missing his spirit greatly. And then last but not least this week, Rufus, a 36-year-old male Bornean orangutan, passed away at the Kansas City Zoo. Rufus had a heart condition that the team had been monitoring and treating for many years, something made easier by his own participation in his healthcare. This care was so good that Rufus well outlived what vets predicted when he was first diagnosed with the disease. And moving on from births and deaths, we get to the rest of our zoo news section. And I don't love this first story, but another giraffe has been seized from Natural Bridge Zoo, the zoo that recently lost 2 giraffe babies, not as in they died, but as in they claim they don't know where they are. And we've talked about this. If you haven't heard those episodes, you have to go back and listen, because I'm not going to rehash the whole story, but I really wish I could stop talking about this facility. There is currently only 1 giraffe left at the zoo that actually belongs to it rather than to the state of Virginia at this point. Because again, each animal that is seized has to be seized individually. You can't just be like, oh, hey, you're mistreating, 3/4 of your giraffe herd, so we're going to take the 4th one too, which is really something. The zoo is arguing that the state should leave them alone because all of the uncertainty is stressful to the animals, which is cute, coming from a facility with so many citations and seizures that happened because of major welfare issues. Again, I would just really, really love to stop discussing this place right now. But not because I'm ignoring them, but because they stopped doing terrible things. Just a thought. On a much happier note, the Bronx Zoo has officially opened its latest exhibit, World of Darkness, featuring 25 species such as sloths, pygmy slow lorises, aye-ayes, sandcats, and more. The area is dark and uses red lights to allow you to see the animals as they experience nighttime during your day. I love nocturnal houses, and I cannot wait to go check this one out. I will say that, when the Bronx Zoo goes all in on a new area, they go all the way in. So I can only imagine how amazing this place is. There was a very cool story out of the Denver Zoo this week. So in the 1950s, Doris Garcia was preparing to embark on a research trip to Antarctica when she was told she couldn't go because, you guessed it, she was a woman. She was never able to make a trip there and never got to meet her favorite species of animal, which are penguins, because she didn't get to go on this trip. Well, she didn't get to meet them until recently anyway, when she was invited to the Denver Zoo at the age of 96 to finally get to meet some penguins. The experience was absolutely magical for her, and I just really love that the zoo did this for her. Now, the penguins at the Denver Zoo are not Antarctic penguins, and she was not bothered by that fact at all. I think this is such a cool story, not just because, the zoo did something cool or because a woman got to fulfill a literal lifelong dream to meet penguins, but also because I think, for those of you that work in the industry or that have the financial wherewithal to do a lot of animal encounters, or who have podcasts that allow them to go and meet animals, right? All the different things. I think sometimes it's easy to forget how special those moments are. And that's coming from a guy who thinks all of those moments are incredibly special. I take none of them for granted. But to think that this was this 96-year-old woman's dream to meet penguins. And I've hung out with penguins all over the place, tons of times, volunteered with them. It's just really nice to pause and remember that those of us who get to do those kinds of things, it is really special. And then last but not least, in the Zoo News section this week, last year, the Edinburgh Zoo lost a red panda cub, Roxy, because of stress caused by fireworks. And now, a year later, the Edinburgh Council is consulting on potential areas for firework control zones, one of which includes the area around the zoo. And given the extreme amount of suffering that fireworks cause to animals, this is a great initiative, and I really hope more localities all around the world consider banning the use of fireworks around zoological facilities, or altogether. Honestly, we can do drone shows and stuff now, guys. There are just so many other options. But it's really tragic that losing a red panda cub may have contributed to this. But maybe it won't have been in vain, which is a nice thought. And that brings us to Stereotypical Animal Podcast Theme Song. Here to bring you to conservation news. All right, the sage grouse has apparently gone extinct in North Dakota, making it the first state in decades to completely lose a population of this bird species. Now, the good news is that with them being migratory birds, there is a chance that they will return to the area from other states. But without some serious conservation work, the species is going to be gone from one of its range states and have no desire to come back. So hopefully they can do some reintroductions and actually fix the problems that exist. And then we have some great news for sea turtles, which is also terrible news for single-use plastic straws that are attempting to kill said sea turtles. Florida nesting numbers for sea turtles are looking really good, y'all. The most leatherback nests ever have been recorded in Florida, and the season isn't over yet. Loggerhead nesting is slower than the last few years, but still well within the normal range, and green turtle nesting is picking up well ahead of 2024. So this is really, really good news all around for sea turtles. Yay. And then this last story in conservation news is one of those stories that makes the episode not because of the story, but because of the weird facts around it. So the actual story is that the UK does an annual 5-day census of swans on the River Thames to check the population and assess the health of the individuals that are counted. Which, cool. I'm all about censuses of animals and population studies and all that jazz. Super helpful stuff for conservation. But here's where this gets weird enough to be in Zoo News. The reason they do an annual census of swans is because the swans technically all belong to King Charles III, because one of the many titles owed by the King or Queen of Britain is the Siguner of Swans, or the Lord of the Swans. And as such, the monarch owns all members of the mute swan species found in the open waters of Britain. Because of this, oarsmen, called swan uppers, are tasked with finding the swans on a stretch of the river, at which point they shout, "All up!" and the boats quickly surround the birds, marking them and checking them for signs of disease or injury. Because, King Charles III owns them. This event is known as the swan upping, and while I fully admit that the United States isn't exactly doing great in the whole leadership department right now, at least we avoid weird monarchy things like saying, hey, this guy owns all the swans. At least we don't do that yet. Nothing would surprise me at this point. So I thought this was kind of interesting. Recently, a melanistic dhole has been seen. Now, dholes, or Asiatic wild dogs, have been documented with melanism in the past, but it's been 90 years since one has been seen before this one. So that's cool in and of itself. But what I found particularly interesting is that the same melanistic trait that makes the dog fully black seems to come from domestic dogs. And there are some scientific studies that seem to say that there is some additional resistance to disease in melanistic dogs. I'm not sure why that is the case, but apparently it's a thing, and it's very likely that this melanistic dhole also has increased resistance to disease. So, neat. And I guess if that's really true, then eventually melanism will be an evolutionary trait that becomes a thing, and all dholes will be black. Unless it's so rare that that just can't happen. But that's how evolution works. I just checked some Punnett squares, and I'm right. I remembered the phrase Punnett squares. Very proud of that. Anyway, and then last but not least in this section, Colossal Biosciences recently admitted that they didn't bring the dire wolf back, and so now they are obviously going to move on from that narrative with future projects, and no longer say they'll be de-extincting other animals, right? Right? I mean, that must be correct. Okay, so let me just look at this story confirming that. Oh, no, wait, that's not what it says. Instead, Colossal has announced that they might de-extinct the moa, a 12-foot-long flightless bird. And I'm not going to go into a ton of details here, but the thing that frustrates me is that the article that announced this implied the animals could be de-extincted and made part of a reintroduction program, while also saying the company successfully de-extincted direwolves and also have a plan for reintroducing that species into the wild. All of which we 100% know is false. And this wasn't some internet article. Y'all, this was Time magazine. Multiple false narratives being spread like this from real journalistic sources is just destroying my brain right now. And the fact that Colossal Biosciences is going to continue to go on and make billions of dollars by pretending to de-extinct things, I'm not here for it, y'all. I'm just not. But apparently, Peter Jackson, of Lord of the Rings fame, is involved with this one because the moa is a kiwi, a New Zealand bird, not an actual kiwi bird, but hey, bird from New Zealand. And New Zealanders are called kiwis. And, he spent lots of time there doing Lord of the Rings and stuff. So, yeah, I don't know. Lord of the Rings director plans to help bring back a bird from extinction, even though we know that's not possible, was not on my weird crap bingo card for July, but here it is. And speaking of it being July, it's time for...
Oh, animal holidays. Animal holidays. Hey!
July is Plastic Free July, National Bison Month, Parks and Recreation Month, and Wild About Wildlife Month. The 19th is Echidna Day and Vaquita Day and also launches National Moth Week. The 20th launches National Zookeeper Week. The 21st is Andean Bear Day, World Bush Dog Day, and launches Coral Reef Awareness Day. Got a whole lot of really, I don't know, kind of really cool stuff popping up on this 1 week here. I really like it. And then on the 22nd, just kidding. There are no animal holidays. Gotcha. All right, y'all. That's a whole new episode of Zoo News just for you. And I need to take some NyQuil and go the heck to sleep. But before I do that, I want to say thank you to all of my patrons, especially my Red Panda level patrons, Dr. Laura Schenk, Dr. Stephen Williamson, Barbara Bennett, Jenny Owens, Melissa Reed, Carrie Kirkpatrick, John Lewis, who is also here for stickers, and Kevin Williams. And I'd also like to say thank you to everyone who contributed a story or many stories this week, including Anya Keene, Colleen Linehan, Kim Cooley Croninger, Carrie Kirkpatrick, Kevin Williams, Emily Rockbuck, Anna McEachran, Elizabeth Charles. Yes, I wonder if she owns any swans. Maddie Pats, Daniel Cohen, Jacob Zinn, Marianne Rossi, Ken Tryon, Dr. Laura Schenk, Melissa Reed, Matt Fouts,
Ali Malensky, Kay Malensky,
Dr. Zoe Rossi, Dr. Natalie Taco, Amanda Berg, Jay Meredith, who you know was coming in with that Dholes story, Sarah Henry, Ann Yoshioka, Barbara Bennett, Strix, and John Lewis. Thank you all for contributing, and seriously, please let me go because I need to get some frequent NyQuil. See, I'm so sick I even blew that. But anyway, you know what I mean. Steider Kuswen.
The Rossifari podcast is produced, hosted, and engineered by John Rossi. Editing and fact-checking by John and Dr. Zoe Rossi. Our theme song is Sevens by Nathan Burke, performed by Nathan and John. Interrupting John theme and additional voices by Taylor Isaac Gray. You can reach John directly on Instagram and Facebook at Rossifari or by email at rossifaripod@gmail.com. Rossifari is part of the Daydreamer Media Network. Now, stop listening to me and go visit a zoo.
And then last but not